Hi everyone, this is Megha, co-founder of Juicy Chemistry, skin and personal care brand building in India over the last decade and more. Here are a few snippets from my life and a few things that I'd like to share with all of you on what shaped my journey and what led me to become the founder of an ethical skincare brand. I left home at the age of 16, not because I loved independence. School had started becoming unbearable. It was only around then that I was diagnosed with PCOD and my skin, hair, body had started showing signs of it. I'd started gaining weight. I'd started having unbearable acne, unruly hair. It just refused to calm down. It became a source of joke of sorts for people. I didn't know why this was happening until much later. I didn't know what I could do to control it. Was I cleaning my face enough? Absolutely. Why was it not helping? It started becoming so difficult to look at myself in the mirror and you constantly feel unwanted, ugly. I knew if I continued like this, I would break. At the age of 16, I requested my parents send me to a residential school, a boarding school in those days as we called it, and normally the concept of boarding school back then, more than 2.5 decades ago was all about if you were a mischievous child, you were sent away to boarding school. I was a straight A student. I was somebody who never broke rules. So for my parents, it came as quite a shock. They were of course not comfortable with it, but they realized that I've already identified that if I live in Bombay, I will not survive. I will not be able to deal with the pain that I'm going through. So when I left home, I took a decision that shaped my life. I'm ever grateful to that. But nobody prepares you for the change and the kind of responsibility that this kind of a decision comes with. It was only much later I realized how humiliation shaped up my ambition in life. The one thing that changed once I left home was I always had my guard on. I didn't trust enough. I was always over-prepared, wanted to overachieve. I was eager to always please. The only thing that mattered was protecting myself from ever being hurt again, from ever being made to feel small. And this shift became so obsessive. Over time, what it did was create so much anxiety, so much pressure, and the constant need somewhere, feeling to prove yourself got overwhelming. The good thing is I recognized it. I recognized it after feeling complete exhaustion. The next steps were what was I going to do to fix it, because it couldn't go on like that. The first thing that I did was learn to speak calmly whenever I disagreed in a situation. I stopped saying yes. It was difficult because you are someone who's trying to be a people pleaser, and then suddenly you're having to say no. It's very empowering to learn to say no. Difficult, but once you learn it and you know when to use it right, it's very empowering. I learned that saying no did not mean I was putting someone else down. It simply meant that I was voicing my opinion. If I disagreed on something, I disagreed. Simple as that. Another thing that I did was stop over-explaining myself. It's one thing to say no, but it's another thing to constantly having to explain yourself. It's like you are literally justifying your opinions. And it didn't go down very well because I kept thinking, why am I having to explain so much? I have put my thought to it. I disagree to this particular thing. Why am I having to explain this just to please the opposite person or, create rationale when it wasn't required, explaining logical thinking when it wasn't my job to do that. Every decision did not need a defense. So once I started doing that, I felt a lot more calmer. I felt my anxiety levels going down. I felt more in control. And the last thing that I did for myself was question myself, am I doing this to grow or to prove myself? Growth feels energizing. Proving feels exhausting. Constantly trying to get validation for what you're doing feels exhausting. The question slowly helps you reset your motivation. While nobody talks about how humiliation shapes ambition, you can recognize the pattern and change your relationship with it. You can keep the ambition, but you can let go of the fear that created it. You don't need to prove your worth through rooms that once made you feel small.